Hey, it's America's Supermom. Thank you for joining me on my podcast. This series is the Corona Chronicles. I created this so that we would have an outlet of positivity in the midst of a lot of negativity. You know what I'm talking about. All the news, the fear around this virus, how it can affect us, what the new normal is looking like, and how so many things have changed that a lot of people feel like um, it is the end of the world, so to speak. So, this podcast was created so that those of us who have hope, who are willing to move forward with this new normal and innovate new things that will help us to be creative and positive. That is what this platform is for us to come together and share that positivity and that light with those who may need it. So if you're interested in sharing your insight, please reach out because we can never have enough positive news. So sit back and enjoy the show.
I want to thank you guys for
All
joining
right,
me
thank you, dear.
today. I'm really excited about my next guest, Michael Ray. We actually have met just through LinkedIn. I did a LinkedIn post, and someone referred me to Michael, and he has a smile uh, campaign as well. So I'm really excited to get into his story, what his mission is with the smile, and it's just like I'm just so excited because I'm just it resonates with me, his mission and things. So at this time, I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself before we get into the dynamics of smile and what that means.
Well, hey, good afternoon. Michael Ray from Louisville, Kentucky, and I am insanely grateful and blessed that you asked me to come on the program and talk about all things that are beautiful and
Awesome.
blessed
So
by a
let's talk
smile.
about, you've got this project or campaign. Tell everybody a little bit about how you got started with it.
Yeah, so it's interesting that I've been doing it for a little bit over 2 years, and one of the main things I struggled with when I named it what I named it, Smile Project Louisville, was the piece of project because I didn't really intend to have any finality. And sometimes when we look and perceive
Mhm.
projects, well, there's a start and an end date, and there isn't. And really, where it's kind of progressed is it's become
Mhm.
this movement now. But to answer your question, I've got a 21-year-old daughter with
Mhm.
Down syndrome who is nonverbal. And for me, and as really anybody, a parent, we take for granted those three simple words that we hear from our kids,
Mm.
which is, I love you. But I've never heard those three words, I love you, from my daughter,
Mhm.
Maddie, who has Down syndrome. So she had always spoken to me
Mm.
through smiling. So whenever I needed affirmation of love, a pick me up, just want to feel great, feel the joy and happiness in her life, I felt
Mhm.
it through a smile. So, of course, I had that present in my life for years, but it really took where it intersected with what we do through the normal course of our lives. And then for me, it happened to be one late March morning in which I went through a drive-through. I was rolling through Wendy's and I was having a horrible morning and my mindset was awful. And it was because I knew I was on the doorstep of
Mm.
getting ready to lose my job. But in that moment, and I won't forget it, Chantrell was so uplifting.
Mhm.
Smiling, her energy, her personality. And just in that short, 30, 40 seconds that I
Mm.
interacted with a stranger, it made a difference in my morning and day. So much so, that I actually literally had to pull over into a parking spot and process what just
Wow.
took place. I had a moment where I had to reflect on it with God. And then I chose to get out of the car and actually walk back. I laugh about it now, but I'm I'm kind of the creepy guy that walked back up to the drive-through window, because it felt so much. I was literally moved to tears in that moment. But I wanted to tell, Chantrell, the
Mm.
impact that it had on me, that I was grateful for that. So we had that. I took a picture. And of course, then, you process all that kind of took place. And then I found myself a couple of days later, in the gym working out. And I was smiling with somebody else, another
Mm.
stranger. And then again, a couple of days later, someone else. And this went on. I started taking pictures, and it went on for like 2 weeks. And then I was like, wow, the impact that my daughter has had in my life and the benefits that I've seen, even though she can't speak to me
Mhm.
through smiling, it all went back to the interaction with Chantrell. And I was like, wow, what am I doing
Mm.
here? And that's when I started kind of formulating the ideas of going, okay, it's some kind of smile project. And of course, I've lived in Louisville for 30 years, so I just threw that name in
Mm.
there. And then it's really where the mission started, the movement. It was taking pictures with
Mhm.
strangers. And I kind of had a really quick elevator pitch to people. And when I introduced myself and I said, look, I'm just trying to spread love through smiling to change attitudes and
Mm.
behaviors of people. And then we would smile. And I always, in those very short interactions, I mean, some two
Mhm.
minutes, some 20, I always wanted to learn something amazing about the person that I smiled with to share with the world. So, when you create a social media platform now, and that's what I did, I took the picture and then I went out. And then, if it was, again, Chantrell, I found out something
Mhm.
amazing about them to share with the world.
Mm.
So that's kind of the foundation. And of course, over time, my movement has has
This is
evolved
awesome.
greatly. But for really the first half of it, again, I'm about 2 years in. It really primarily was pictures with strangers, and I don't know how many, but I easily probably took 250,
Mm.
300 pictures, primarily locally. And if I was traveling for whatever reason, I can vividly remember being in LA for a week. I found people to
Mm.
take
That is
pictures with.
awesome. Now, so many different questions. The first one I would say is um, being able to transition your needs for somebody else's. So by that I mean with your daughter being nonverbal. So for some people right now, we get into this space where we know what we want and we expect people to give us stuff the way we want it. And we don't listen sometimes to the other person to have a language to where we could get what we want and
Amen.
they can get what they want. So in this case, your daughter was nonverbal, but you learned to listen to her and she was able to give you love in a way that she could give it. Does that question kind of make sense?
And you know what? And I say that, and yes, and I reflect back on that time, and now go, she was probably speaking more to me
Mhm.
non-verbally, and as I was listening and allowing that to change me. And I tell people openly about this. Look, I evolved as a
Mhm.
father and a man, through that, through that relationship again, even though she wasn't uttering those three words. So I probably look at it now as I have felt so much more love, not even hearing those words and
Mhm.
knowing the relationship that I have with my daughter just through
Yes.
smiling.
And so walk us through that process to where you were able to be open to hearing more from her. Because sometimes, even as a parent, our kids try to reach out to us and we're
Oh, of
like, not
course.
right now, I'm working. Or even they come and talk to us and it's like, you know what? This is an emergency for them. I don't really see the emergency. I mean, there's so many dynamics with parenting, right? So,
There is. And I think, look, I think there are a lot of parents that are really good parents. And I would have at one point in time considered myself that because, of course, I have
mhm.
three other children, and that I was just present.
Mm.
And you talk about those things too. Sometimes you hear, but maybe you're not actually
Mhm.
listening. And I do reflect back and say, look, for the first half of my daughter's life, I think I was just present.
Mm,
I was one of those parents that I was there, but yet I don't know how actively involved I was in her life until, again, it's not just her, but it was a lot of other things in my life. I'd lost a son, my career
mm,
fell apart. I went from having money and then became broke, and then my marriage failed and lost my house. So,
mhm,
you know, there's a lot of things that kind of fall into place, but yet, and look, faith is a big
mhm,
piece of opening up. And I think God was always talking to me. And again, it goes back to, as I spoke about my daughter, you know, God was probably speaking to me for such a long period of time, but I wasn't listening.
mm,
So for me, it was that moment, I think, that where I evolved as a father and a
mhm,
man, that I started to listen to him more. And when it was that drive through at Wendy's, it was a moment in which I actively believed the Holy Spirit was speaking to me,
mm,
and I was listening.
mm,
And then it wasn't just that moment, but then it's really then being more active in prayer and faith of going, okay. And I did, like I
mhm.
said earlier, I did. About 10 days later, I lost my job. And then, okay, as a 48-year-old man, where do I want to go from here in, taking that leap of
Mhm,
faith, um, personally and professionally, to go, okay, this is how it's going to look.
mhm.
So, uh, I think, so many things happen to us as individuals, as parents. It's how we react
Mhm.
in what lessons we want to learn, from them. And they say, a lot of times it's not what happens. I think it's like 90% of how we
Right.
react to it. So it really was then a situation of surrounding myself with the right people, the right content to create a new mindset. I mean, in 2014, I I pulled up in front of a church and sat there for an hour crying, contemplating how I wanted to kill myself. But if it wasn't for my
Right.
faith and going, no, I can't disconnect from my relationship with Christ. And no, God, I don't know, I don't know what it is, but he's got more in it for me. And even at that point in 2014, it still took almost another
Right.
4 years to get to the, it's on God's time. We don't understand his patience,
Right.
so it still took more time of probably lessons and learning
Mhm.
to be ready
Mhm.
to do what I do today. And I think it was perfect timing in that moment that he was ready and I was willing to listen. And I think like I said, I had evolved enough as a father and a man.
Mhm.
I was willing to do
That
it.
is so awesome. And then another aspect is thinking like, you're taking her message to other people. So for some people who when you have a movement and there's a motivation behind it, how do you marry that with um, making the message more important than the messenger? Because we fall into that.
And oh, I mean, you're speaking my
Mhm.
language. I mean, I think a lot about it as I then really kind of honed in on the things that I had learned from my daughter beyond just the smiling, you know, is that everything is led from love.
Mm.
So if you can lead from love in your leadership, in your personal and professional
Mhm.
life, it makes things so much easier. And I started looking at my daughter like, there's no greater form of unconditional love
Mhm.
than what God created with her.
Mhm.
So if I can then incorporate that and then start telling people as far as our relationship, so it then in my movement, it transcended into a lot of videos
Mm.
and interactions
Mhm.
that I would have with my daughter to give them very short lessons of things where, again, going back to evolving as a father and a man,
Mhm.
and then learning from her too. Here she's born with this
Mhm.
disability. She probably on some level has the mind of, I don't know, an 8, 10, 12-year old. I mean,
Mhm.
she can't read or
Mhm.
write. But yet I started to also see and feel, and then in those videos would share with people that, wow, how impressive in which she lives in almost in a constant state of joy and
Mm.
happiness. We find ourselves absolutely a lot of times chasing it, and
Mm.
it's usually chased in things,
Right.
in material things. We chase more success, and what I really started to understand and realize is that joy and happiness is ever present in our lives, really in the relationships
Mm.
that we have. And here it is so simple that she wakes up every day and lives in a state of almost internal joy and happiness. So
Mm.
I'm like, no, it's not about the better job, more money, the car, the bigger TV, all the things where that's where we bring such stress
Right.
and we complicate our life. But yet, I think God intended it for it to be,
Mm.
that simple. And then all of a sudden now we're in this great pandemic, and then I'm witnessing she doesn't have any fear or anxiety.
Right.
Again, she doesn't, I don't see stress. She's not worried about
Right.
the things that at times you and I are. And I'm like, okay, again, going back to she has this disability, but on some level, she's probably more perfect
Mm-hmm.
in Christ's image than we actually are.
Amen. That's phenomenal. And then the other thing too is to think how significant a smile is. So you've walked us through this whole process to where, you were in this drive-through and this had an aha moment for you. And for somebody who is listening that is in that place of thinking, talk to them about how significant a smile can be.
Well, and for me, and what I think I came to realize was that, and it probably took me a couple of months of doing the work early on in this process in my movement, in that I understood that God was telling me I needed the smile, the human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, too, in a lot of cases, we hugged it out.
Mm.
And never thinking too that after I lost my job and I started this and I was about a month into it, of course I still needed to earn a living.
Mm-hmm.
I became a Lyft and Uber driver.
Mm.
And I never thought at the time that all of a sudden, of course, until I'm doing this, that I had hundreds, if not thousands, over the course of the next 18 months, strangers in my vehicle
Mm.
that I had opportunities to share moments with. And and here's a great example. I'll give you two.
Mm-hmm.
I had one, and a lot of times I tell people, in doing what I do, you can't have any comfort zones. You have to be able to, willing again to shake hands, high five, fist bumps,
Mm-hmm.
hugs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and it doesn't mean all that, but but for me, that's what it means. But I walked out of Kroger's. It's a local grocery store. I guess it's in the southeast,
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm going back now maybe 7, 8 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and there were two African American women walking out, and I said to God, I said, "All right, God, what do you want me to do?"
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I've often thought when I've taken pictures with people, because in some when I've done some, I've taken like one on Monday and maybe not one for 2 or 3 days, and then the one the next day. And I've always been tried to guided by, it's not just about forcing more smiles down people's throats.
Mm.
It's about when maybe God was speaking to me. But again, walked outside of Kroger's. There were two African American women. I'm like, all right, God, what do you want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked up to the one, and I had bags in one hand, and I knew I probably couldn't take a picture. And it just dawned on me literally in the moment. And I put my arm around one. Now imagine now again, I mean, yes, it's 8 months ago. As a white dude, I put my arm around the girl and I looked at her and I said, "Hey, when's the last time a white man put his arm around you?" And she looked up at me and started laughing and said, "Actually, never. And it's about damn time."
Aw.
And we had this moment, and then her friend, they both started laughing, and they were like, "And thank God he smells good." And you know what? That's all it was. We had a moment, we laughed and
Mm-hmm.
smiled. It didn't even last 30 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
but yet again, I felt in the moment it was God wanting me to do something there. Or I had another
Mhm.
situation where I had to run into Starbucks. I needed Wi-Fi for like 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, all right, I'll just go into Starbucks.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there. And then there was another moment in which a gentleman had walked into the bathroom.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, wow, that guy's kind of cool. And again, I felt the presence of Christ. I was like, all right, I need to introduce myself, take a picture.
Mhm.
So again, I did that. I talked to the guy for 10 minutes. We left. 2 hours later, he sent me a message. And he said he only walked into Starbucks to use the bathroom. And he met me. And he said it was as if God told him to go to Starbucks because he just came from the cemetery burying his father.
Ah,
And he left the cemetery and he had to use the bathroom. And Starbucks spoke to him. And then there was this complete stranger who
wow.
smiled and hugged him. And he never shared that with me in that moment. But we again spent about 10 minutes together. And here, how is that not God working
That's
through human
awesome.
beings? I mean,
That is awesome. And
so
those
that's
are the
all it was.
moments.
But then he figured out who I was because he went to Facebook and he saw Smile Project Louisville and I shared his picture. And he's like,
Wow.
"Look, I didn't share it with you then, but I wanted to share it with you now. Is that when I left, I cried because you met me. You were a stranger. It was as if God put you in that Starbucks just to smile
Mm,
and hug me after I just left grieving from the
wow.
cemetery."
That's awesome. And those are the moments that only God could orchestrate. You know what I mean? That's a great thing. And
Amen.
so I love the fact that, look at the significance from what we always say are small gestures. We look for the grandiose things like, giving this money in a donation or, having this title to be on this stage. And it's those little moments that can really have an impact in the lives of people. So,
And
just
you know what?
what
And you're exactly right. And I want to get to one other story. And
Okay.
it is because it's what I try to really tell people when it comes to smiling and doing random acts of kindness to make people smile. The
Mhm.
reality of it is all of these things are free. It doesn't mean that you have
Mm.
to go put your arm around all kinds of strangers. But the
Mhm.
beauty of, you could get on an airplane today and fly to Germany and not be able to speak that language. But yet
Mhm.
when you smile to an absolute stranger, they understand and the emotions that is felt, from
Mhm.
smiling. Actually, two real quick one, but anybody listening
Okay.
to this, I would challenge them to go to YouTube and put in Coke happiness is a smile. And you'll see a
Okay.
90-second ad that Coke created. And it's amazing because it's this guy who gets on a subway train and he
Mhm.
hops on the train. He's got earphones in, he's watching an iPad,
Mhm.
and no one around him knows what he's watching, but he starts to laugh. And I often say laughter is just a greater form of smiling. But as he starts to
Mm.
laugh on a crowded subway train, no one can see what he's watching. But
Mhm.
the energy and how infectious and contagious that moment is, before
Mm.
you know it, the entire train could not control themselves, and they were laughing uncontrollably at the man that I'm convinced was watching nothing. So it's the same way with a smile.
Mm.
When you see it from a stranger like I did with Sean Trell and having a bad morning, and that's what I tell people, is that when we
Mhm.
go through the course of our daily lives, even now with this new normal, we don't know what strangers are carrying
Mhm.
on their hearts and in their heads. And for me that morning, it was knowing I was getting ready to lose my job. But in the moment, Sean Trell had an impact on me that changed the course of my day. So the second story I wanted to tell
Mhm.
you was that I had another God moment. I was about 15, 16 months into doing what I was doing. And again, I didn't do really any video at that point. I did some occasional videos with my daughter, Maddie, but I
Mhm.
got out of bed, I was going to the bathroom, and then it just hit me. And I am convinced it was God speaking to me. It's like, look, Michael, if you're trying to make people smile, why are we not doing random acts of kindness
Mm.
to make them smile? So I was like, all right, well, how does that look? So we made a decision after thinking about it for about a week, what we were going to do. And our
Mm-hmm.
very first one, we were going to go into the inner city in Louisville, and then we went into the grocery store, and there were four of us, and we walked up and down the aisles, and we were like, all right, who do we want to bless with a random act of kindness in the moment? And we
Mm-hmm.
actually, the four of us saw two separate women with kids, and we're like, okay, we got moms now. We got moms with kids. But then it was like, all right, God, who do we give something to over someone else? You know, why is so
Mm.
like, God, all right, tell us which one's it going to be? So we decided on who we were going to do. We walked down the aisle and we gave her a $50 gift card to Kroger's for shopping.
Mm.
So, of course, we witnessed and felt the emotion and the love and the beauty of giving an absolute stranger, you know, some unexpected kindness. And then what was
Mm-hmm.
amazing about the first one that we ever did 3 weeks later, she sent me a message and she said, it was as if God sent an angel. I was
Mm.
struggling. We were moving and living from house to house. You know, when you're doing that, it's hard to even find money to go buy groceries for you and your children. And there you were.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, when God when God said make people smile with doing random acts of kindness, I'm like, all right, we can't do
Yes.
just one. Where are we gonna go next? You know, and then that's when it really led into my movement evolved. And it a year ago, it was early August in which I did my first one at the grocery store. And then we started doing more. And that's when I got involved more on sharing those videos on the moments on LinkedIn with people
Mm.
to inspire them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's what I tell people, you know, we give people 50 to 100 bucks, but kindness is free. Smiles are
Yeah.
free. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
when you know, people started to gravitate and wanting to pay it forward to bless others. And that's how we started to get the resources to continue to do more and
Right.
more and more for people.
I love that. And then, so my next question is, so going back, you had this moment at the Wendy's. You said you got out of your car, you went out. Now, a lot of people are at that point. You know what I mean? It's like you get this revelation, there's something you need to do, but you still have a little fear, a trepidation about, was this me? Am I making this up? Or is this something that I really need to do? But you have that voice that's prompting you to do something else. So, what was it that helped you make that transition to go back into the Wendy's or back to the drive-through window? And then, what did you say to her?
So basically, what had transpired is I literally, there were two cars in the drive through. I waited till they rolled through because,
Mm-hmm.
again, I laugh about it going, it is slightly creepy to be the person walking up to the drive through. And of course, her reaction was, sir, what is wrong? Because look, if
Right.
somebody's walking back up, something's wrong. You didn't get your French fries or whatever the case may be. And I said, look, it's not what was wrong, it's what you did that was right. And I
Mm,
felt compelled in the moment to say thank you, that it meant enough that I had to get out of my car and say thank you. I literally, I won't forget it. I only had $5 in my pocket. I said, I don't know why, but it's not a lot of money. I said, I would love to give you $5 to thank you. And then I said, I don't know why either, but I want to remember you. I said, would you mind if we took a picture together? So that
wow.
that was the first picture, you know, that I took with her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I got into starting to do the random acts of kindness, it was last fall. So I'm thinking October, November is when I wanted to try to find her. And she had
Mm-hmm.
left the Wendy's. And then when I tried to work within Wendy's, they said she had moved out of. and didn't know where she was. So I had tried. And it's funny now because I have done a lot of interviews and podcasts, and I have been asked this question multiple times. And the question is, do you remember what she said to you that made you feel good? And I said, you know what's funny is I have absolutely no clue. And what really started to resonate with me was a quote, and it's probably the quote out of the hundreds, if not thousands, of things that this woman shared with this world, Maya Angelou. She said one time, people will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but they won't forget how they made you feel.
Wow.
And that's what I said. I said, you know what? I can still to this day have the emotions and remember how Chantrell made me feel at the drive-through window. I have no clue what she said to me, but I know how she made me feel. And again, that's the beauty of smiling with strangers. And then again, I often say, if you take it the next step forward, if you're sitting at Kroger's, and you're going through the self-checkout and you smile with the person, how you doing? I mean, you could just say, you don't have to have 20-minute conversations. But again, that was the beauty of Chantrell. I remember how she made me feel.
Yeah. This story is just so impactful to me because, we go through the drive-through, we're in a hurry, we're rushing, we don't want to go inside for whatever reason.
Of course.
And to recognize that quick of a interaction could be that impactful. That's just profound.
And at some point, I swear I haven't dreamt like where I've slept about it, but I've been awake dreaming about it, going, I can see myself sitting with my daughter Maddie and Chantrell on the couch with Ellen and telling Ellen this entire story, and we just have this giant group hug because look, it needed that moment, with Chantrell. So as people go through things in life, I think for me, again, I was listening to God. I started to embrace what I would call the power of one. And the power of one is, we sometimes don't do the work and want to create the change because we don't either believe in ourselves or we're just one person and we don't realize the impact. Again, it's just that simplicity of throwing a stone in a pond and the ripple effect. But what I have seen and what I have done and the level of multiplicity and how it's inspired and impacted lives, I'm here to tell you right now, I'm just the most average dude that chose to listen to God, to do the work, to create the change that he wanted to see in his community in the world, and any damn person out there can do it. People don't realize how amazing they are. Is because they get so consumed in their own mind. But I love who I am, but it doesn't mean that I'm better than you. I just know that I'm amazing and I love me.
Right. Yeah. And that is contagious.
And
when you love you, you can, share that with the world and they can love themselves.
And you're right. When you don't, it's obviously it leads to levels of depression and all other, challenges. So.
So true. This is awesome. So tell everybody how they can contribute to your project, how they find you, that type of.
So the easiest thing is if people are not on social media, you can go to my website. It's pretty simple. It's smileprojectlouisville.com. The really good thing, if you're not on social media listening to this, is that everything that we do on all of our platforms is uploaded real time into there. So if you're not anywhere, you can still see the videos, the pictures, the news stories. Everything's been done. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm Michael Ray. If you happen to be on Facebook or Instagram, it's Smile Project Louisville. If you would choose to want to pay it forward, there's those options on the website too.
Awesome. So, and then
and one other thing too is that I'm getting ready to embark. I would ask people to pray for me because with what's going on in this country, I'm going to take it upon myself to drive this country and do random acts of kindness in most every major city somewhere over the course of the next month. And I would ask people to pray for me on my journey. And part of what we do and where we went when we started doing random acts of kindness and videoing is people started reaching out and they started nominating others. And they started telling us the story of other people that were going through challenges that needed love, smiles, and kindness in their life, like Chantrell gave me. So if there's anybody in this country that as I look to, to embark on this little tour that needs love, you can go into that website, you can nominate them, you tell us who you are and what their story is, and we will look to get to them to make a difference in their life.
That is so awesome. Yeah, well, I encourage everybody to do just that. And again, I am just overjoyed that you were able to come on today. I'm so excited for what it is that you're doing. And this is such a lifeline right now for a lot of people because, as we're dealing with this pandemic and a lot of people are, finding out what's important. They're losing stuff,
Amen.
losing people, but they're also, if they're still here, they have to wrap their head around what really is important. What do they need moving forward? So this is just a great project to be a part of. So what final words would you like to leave the audience with?
I'm going to leave you with two things, and that is we smile and make others smile because life can be hard, not easy. And
Mm,
even for somebody who has been transformed like myself, I'm a human being. I still have challenges. But again, I still try to wrap my mind around positivity all the time. And I will tell
mm-hmm.
anybody this, and it goes back to what I shared about the Coke happiness commercial, and that is you can be so happy that when someone else sees you, they will become happy too.
I love that. And that is so true. And again, thank you so much, Michael. I
Well,
appreciate
look
your.
here. I often say this, and I mean this wholeheartedly. These things are a two-way street. So I am
Mm-hmm.
insanely grateful that you reached out and wanted to share my message and my story with your audience. Thank you so much, and God bless you and your family.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sure we're going to meet one day. I'm sure
That will
because
happen. We need to meet and then hopefully safely hug it out.
that's right. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and looking forward to hearing how your journey progresses. Anything that I could do, just reach
I
out. You need
will.
me
I
to
will.
promote anything,
Yeah.
it's already done. But thank you so
All right.
much
Love you,
and
darling. God bless. We'll see you soon.
love you too.
Okay. Be good.
Okay. Um,
Thank you for joining me on this episode. I really enjoy providing content that inspires and challenges us to be a better version of ourselves. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, please email me at info@lachelleatkins.com. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, or my YouTube channel. If there was something in this episode that resonated with you, it probably will resonate with someone else. So please share it. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. But those aha moments, those moments of really getting something and changing your perspective are very, very pivotal in having people change the trajectory of their lives. And so being able to share insightful information so that other people can grow is the easiest thing that we can do as we pay it forward. So again, I want to thank you all for listening. And if you have time, write out a review. Go to iTunes, Anchor, wherever you can find this podcast on any of those platforms and write a review about what impact this episode had on you, what you learned, or whatever. Any feedback is great because it just helps me to understand what content is really beneficial for those that are listening. So, again, I want to thank you all for your support and taking the time to spend some time with me and my guests. and I wish you a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.